It's time for Comeback Sports with Brandon, the Coach Perry, and Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. Here we go.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Comeback Sports. It's a show about 10 of the most relevant sports topics going on in the sports world happening this week. As always, I am one of your hosts, Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. And as always, I am joined by my co-host, Brendan, the Coach Perry. Brendan, how you doing, my friend?
Doing good, man. Having a great day. Exciting week of sports. And I know I'm looking really forward to diving into our 10 topics, especially topic number 10, F1 in Miami.
You are the F1 expert on this panel, no question, but it is going to be something exciting to talk about later on in the show. But we got a lot to talk about today, folks. But as always, make sure that if you really like this show, you're watching right now, so make sure you subscribe on YouTube to Comeback Sports. Give us a subscription. And also, if you want to go in the live chat or, make a comment and say that you are the next subscriber, whatever number you are, we'll make sure to bring up your name on the show next time around. You can also follow us on Twitter at the Twitter handles right at the bottom of your screen. And again, folks, we're adding another feature. Soon you're going to be able to call into the show, but for right now, give us a call, leave a voicemail, leave a question about what you want us to talk about, any type of subject in sports. Doesn't matter what sport it is, doesn't matter what level it is. Give us a question, leave us a voicemail. We'll play it on the air, and then we'll try to answer your question. There's the phone number right there at the bottom of the screen. We're going to have that up throughout the show as well. So, Brandon, topic number one, very local topic here in Massachusetts. For the second year in a row, there was no Boston Marathon on Patriots Day. I always love Marathon Monday / Patriots Day. I used to always go to the Red Sox game, that 11:35 Red Sox game every year. Last couple of years, haven't been able to go. And then just not having the marathon for the second year in a row just didn't feel like Patriots Day once again here in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, especially with the pandemic here. They had to put it on hold, and they're going to try to hold the actual marathon in the fall later this year. So we'll see. Hopefully that it will actually go off, but it will definitely have a different feel considering it's not in the spring and it's not on Patriots Day, especially if you're from New England or if you're from Boston or Massachusetts like we are, that, like you said, we're so used to having it on Patriots Day that it's kind of been an oddity that it hasn't been, obviously, these last 2 years, but understandable due to the pandemic. And we're talking about millions of people coming into the city, not only to run, but also to spectate. So it was just an understandable thing to hold it and to hold it virtually, I guess, for these last 2 years, where you could kind of take part in it and put in virtual times. But everybody knows it's not the real thing. So we're really looking forward to the real thing coming back later this fall. And I know we're really looking forward to the real thing coming back in the spring, hopefully, of next year on Patriots Day, the day that it's supposed to be running, the day that it really feels for all of us. And, it's always such a beautiful day and you're enjoying the day. And I just love checking in on the marathon, especially once they're hitting the hill section, because that's really when you're starting to see who's going to make it or break it, right? And you're starting to see people pull away from the pack at that point. So it's a big deal, especially around here. And it's, I would arguably say, the biggest and best marathon in the world, in my opinion. Only other ones up there would be the New York Marathon and the London Marathon. But Boston Marathon, I'd say, is better than both of those by far. And yeah, Boston's strong, and looking forward to seeing it coming back strong.
Definitely. I mean, Marathon Monday, you're usually doing a couple of things. You're either going to the Red Sox game and then going out to a bar after to watch the rest of the marathon. You're hanging out at somebody's roof deck in Boston, either if you can see the marathon itself or if it's just, fun day Monday and everybody's having a few drinks and hanging out and grilling and doing all that kind of stuff. Even if it's 45 degrees out here in New England, we don't care because it's almost like the sign of spring, here in New England. So you're doing that, or you're actually going to the marathon as a spectator and watching the marathon, which is also a lot of fun. So, it just, unfortunately, a few years ago, we were talking before the show how the marathon bombing was in 2013, which was obviously awful. And that was something that, we never thought the marathon we would miss the marathon so much after that, And then we've had some great marathons since then. And then last year with the pandemic, and it's like now we're missing it entirely. And then we're moving it this year. And it's too bad because it's just such a great sports day in New England, and especially in Massachusetts, because Patriots Day is not a national holiday. I didn't even know that till I got to college. Like I thought that like Patriots Day was this national holiday that everybody got off, but it's just a Massachusetts thing. So it's one of my favorite days, sports days of the year in April. I always try to go to the Sox game. You got the marathon on. It's always just a fun day. Like I said, it's a sign of the spring. And without that, it just didn't feel right. Even though the Red Sox, had a game at 11:30, they beat the White Sox 11-4 on Monday. It just wasn't the same without having that marathon. So I hope that the fall one goes well. It might be cool to see a marathon in the fall because we have the foliage, we have this fall weather that we always love here in New England. But it's not going to be the same as when it's in April on Patriots Day, which hopefully in 2022 it's going to be back to normal with the Boston Marathon next year.
Yeah, no, I agree. Hopefully back to normal. And I think it will be. I think we're working our way quickly back to normal. And speaking of the sign of spring here, you might have seen me swatting. I've got a stink bug flying around in the room here. So definitely a sign of spring with these bugs coming back. So once you jump on this Red Sox topic, I'm going to jump out of the screen and go kill this thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to the marathon coming back and looking forward to the championship runners coming back to the streets of Boston, hopefully sooner than later. We'll see what they can do in the fall with the temperature being changed. It should be a totally different race at that point. But I'm really looking forward to seeing it coming back full time next year in the spring. But moving on to topic number 2, the Red Sox and the hot Red Sox. The Celtics are hot. I mean, the Bruins are hot. It's a hot time in the city right now to be a New England fan. I mean, hey, this is what we expect, right? City of champions, and Red Sox are kind of working their way towards the playoffs. It looks like already being a playoff contending team with the streak that they're on right now.
Yeah, at the beginning of the season, the Red Sox started off 0-3, and everybody was, thinking the sky was falling with this Red Sox team. The pitching wasn't great. They weren't hitting right away. And, that's the one thing you expected them to do. We knew that the rotation wasn't going to be great, especially to start without Chris Sale coming in. You had Nick Pivetta coming in. You have Perez, who hasn't been a great starter for them. So you weren't sure, if this team was ever going to pick it up. But after that original 0-3 start, now the Red Sox have really picked it up. They've gone 12-3 since starting 0-3, and they're sitting in first place, at least 4 games ahead of everybody else in the AL East. So we went from, everybody's freaking out after going 0-3 to all of a sudden this team just can't be beat, and they're incredibly fun to watch because of the way they hit. So the lineup's hitting well. I still miss Mookie Betts. I wish they didn't trade him. But Alex Verdugo looks like a ball player, man. I'm very excited to continue to watch Alex Verdugo. He's been great. JD Martinez is having a bounce-back year. We kind of figured that. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago, that he's probably going to be one of the best bounce-back candidates for the Red Sox. That has proven to be the case so far. Devers can still pick it up a little bit, but he's been hitting. Bogarts is hitting as usual. And they've just been a lot of fun to watch. They're 12-6. Awesome record in the month of April so far. And again, they're fun to watch. Last year, it was such a weird season, and they weren't hitting, and their pitching wasn't great, and it just wasn't a fun Red Sox season. Never mind the fact that it was just a weird, shortened season. This year, it's back to just loving throwing on the Sox at 7:00 every night and watching the Red Sox hit. And it's been a great season so far. We don't want to be those fans that are like, we're in first place and, everything like that. And the Yankees are struggling because they are struggling, but it's so early, but you can't ignore the great start for the Red Sox so far.
I mean, I don't care if it was one game. I'm going to enjoy seeing the Yankees at the bottom of the series there, no matter what. And so it's really good to see them at the bottom and us at the top. But I mean, yeah, this is a team that started off slow. And I always say it, and I think a lot of us from Boston know it too. I mean, this is a team, they kind of need the weather. So they go down to Florida. It's much warmer. They get into that kind of like feel of Florida weather. Then they come back to Boston, and it's a little chilly here in the spring. The bats cool down a little bit. They're not like running around as fast. It's just a totally different feel, right? Once the weather starts coming around, turning around, the bats start getting hot again. And that's exactly what you're seeing with this team. They're really starting to adjust and adapt to being back in Boston, being with the spring weather here. And the weather's warming up. I mean, it was a beautiful 65-degree day today. Would have been played baseball, I think. And I think their game got postponed a little bit, though, because of a rainstorm that came in today. But it's starting to get better. Like I said, the weather's improving, and so is their play. And like I said, they started off slow in the preseason, but the more they play, they're just getting better, figuring out a great lineup to play. And yeah, Alex Verdugo, man, he is just amazing. And I think that's like a guy that is going to be a fan favorite for years to come, because he's just really starting to prove it, not only on the field with his play, but off the field with his interactions with the fans and the media. I think he's just turning into one of those guys where the city's really going to love him. I know I'm already starting to love him, seeing him rock that Cuban link chain and then going to rock a home run too. So this is a guy, a young superstar up and coming on the Red Sox, and the Red Sox are playing hot right now. So yeah, this is a team to watch right now. Keep your eyes out for the Sox going forward.
Yeah, I'm not sure if their rotation is going to be able to hold up throughout the season. That's, I think, their biggest question mark. I think we all know that. We'll see what happens there. They could make a deal at the deadline. We'll see what happens when Chris Sale comes back. He just had Tommy John surgery. You can't expect a ton out of him when he comes back in possibly July. So, it's a lot to ask for from him, but we'll see what happens. So far they've been great, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. And like you said, and like I talked about before, Verdugo is fun to watch, man. He works the count. He's a ball player. He's very skilled. He's a very good athlete, but he's a ball player too, which is what we love up here in Boston. We talked about the Red Sox being hot right now, but another basketball player who's been red hot and who's been on fire lately has been Steph Curry, lighting it up from downtown as usual. And we always have known Steph Curry is a great, unbelievable shooter, maybe the greatest shooter ever in the NBA. But this year, without Klay Thompson, now that Durant's not there anymore, you just see him really taking the bull by the horns, and he has become the guy in Golden State once again and has taken over that Warriors team.
Well, he's healthy right now, and I think that's the key to it, really. He's playing at max health right now and playing at max skill, getting back into the rhythm. And believe it or not, it is a rhythm sport. Really, once you start getting hot, you can stay on a streak for a long time, and we're seeing it. I mean, the guy's been averaging over 30 points a game for the entire month of April. And I mean, today's April 21st, people. So we're talking about like several weeks, 3 weeks of averaging 30-plus points a game, okay? And wins have come with that, too. They've been on and winning. They've been winning. They brought Boston to the max the other night, where it was a great shootout between, I'm wearing his shirt, Jason Tatum dropped 44, but Curry dropped 47. Luckily, the Celtics pulled out the win, but it was just really one of those things where at any point in time, Steph Curry can will his team to win. And with the points that he's dropping, only a couple other guys on his team have to kind of chip in. Because, like I said, averaging over 30 points a game for the last 3 weeks, really a player that's on fire, a player that I told you has changed the game. And we've talked about this in the past on the show about how he's really changed the game. And part of it I like and I love, and part of it I dislike. And we'll get to the part I dislike, because right now, being a high school basketball coach, you can't get these kids to shoot a mid-range jumper. All they want to do is shoot three-pointers because of Steph Curry. So he's literally changed the game that just everybody wants to shoot threes all day long, and they're trying to water down the mid-range game. And maybe call me a basketball purist, but I love the mid-range jumper, and I think it should always be part of the game. But maybe it's like that olden days when, people wouldn't dunk, they'd lay it in, and then people started dunking, so that was even a change of the game. I think we're kind of seeing a change of the game now, where the three-point dagger is really starting to be bigger in the game, and Steph Curry is obviously the guy that's leading the way. And then when he has his splash brother out there, Klay Thompson, dropping threes, obviously they're just really exciting team to watch without Kevin Durant. I don't care. They didn't need Kevin Durant. When they put him onto that team, they just became better and obviously a championship winning team, but they didn't need him really. with those Splash Brothers and Draymond Green, that team will be just fine. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Klay Thompson get healthy and get back on the court. But in the meantime, Steph Curry is just on fire, and he's taking this team on his back.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I missed the mid-range game too. That's why I always love Paul Pierce. But Curry has changed the game. You're absolutely right. I think he really resonates too with younger kids because he's kind of small. He's not this big, 6'8", physical specimen like LeBron is. He's not like Harden. He's not like, some of the bigger guys. Even like a Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown.
Go kill this thing.
Go get him, man. Knock that thing down like Steph Curry knocks down threes. But yeah, Curry's been unbelievable, and he's one of those guys who has changed the game. Analytics is part of it too. Coaches now believe in spreading the floor out, guys knocking down threes, opening up the lane for other players. We'll see if it shifts back because now, NBA teams went small for a while. Now you're seeing the reemergence of big men in the NBA with Joel Embiid and Jokic and Rudy Gobert and Clint Capella and some of these other, Bam Adebayo and all these other big guys that are coming back. Anthony Davis when he's healthy. You have all these big guys now kind of coming the brow, baby, coming back, even though he's a Laker, coming back. So, we'll see if there's a shift in, the tendencies of these NBA teams now that there's more big guys that are that skilled, so things change all the time in all these sports leagues, but especially in the NBA, there's trends and then things go back to other ways. So we'll see if this continues. But yeah, Curry is just, the shots he was hitting against the Celtics, I know they lost, but he was hitting daggers against the Celtics where you're just like, there's no way that's going in. And then he hits it. And it's like he was practicing that shot in his driveway, for the past 3 days, and then he just hits it easily. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah, I think Steve Curry, like as a coach, sometimes when a guy shoots a three, you're like, don't shoot that. But then it goes in. You're like, all right, nice shot. I think Steve Kerr at this point is just like, let's just chill out and relax. Let him just do his game and just pull threes because that's what he does. And obviously he's got the patented, I call it, the patented look away three where he just shoots it and he runs down the other end of the court because he knows it's going in. And he shoots at such a high percentage that he can do things like that. But I think you brought up a great point where with the game going, beyond the arc, let's say, that big men are having to adapt and big men are learning how to shoot. And your best big men, I should say, are the ones that can shoot beyond the arc and bring their game outside. And we're talking about, being able to bring a center outside of the paint defensively, which is huge because now it opens up to be able to be your guards to attack the hoop or guys to pass and cut and attack the hoop with the center not there defending the hoop. So it's definitely changing the game. And like you said, the big men are adjusting to it. And Steph Curry's the one that's leading the way of changing the game by bringing the game deeper beyond the arc. I mean, this guy's shooting from the logo. He's got LeBron James trying to shoot from the logo because he's shooting from the logo. And you got Dame Lillard shooting from the logo and Harden. But it all started with Steph Curry doing all that because he was doing all that and people were so amazed. And his Splash brother. So I'm really looking forward to seeing these guys get really back on the court so they can start dropping threes together. But in the meantime, Curry's just going to be dropping 30 to 40 points a game until Klay comes back. And I'll be watching and enjoying every second of it. But moving on to topic number 4, and that's the Celtics. The Celtics are on a red hot streak. Like I said, the Red Sox are on a hot streak. The Celtics are on a hot streak. The Bruins are playing pretty good. This is a great time to be a fan of Boston sports and New England sports. But yeah, man, I've been preaching this. Go back, producer Ben, pull up some old shows for them, put it up there. I've been preaching saying, relax. This team is going to get hot after the break. And this is exactly what they did.
Yeah, the Celtics, they went on a 6-game winning streak. Unfortunately, they lost the other night to the Bulls, which, not a great loss for them because the Bulls were actually shorthanded. Zach LaVine didn't play in that game. The Celtics were a little shorthanded, too. They didn't have Robert Williams or Kemba Walker. Fournier still out. So I think the biggest thing with this team is, they winning the 6 of the last 7, it's got them back up in the standings where they can, if they can do another, win 7 out of 10, win 8 out of 12 type of way to finish off the season. And then, you can really get into that top 4. Even if it's top 5, you're still sitting better in the playoff contention, in the playoff seeding. So that's really what they needed to do. Now, their schedule wasn't super tough. They did play Denver, and they beat Denver at Denver. They also beat Portland at Portland. So those are 2 Western Conference playoff teams that you did beat out west. They beat the Lakers, who were clearly shorthanded. They beat the Warriors in a great game. They needed an overtime to beat the Timberwolves, which I know a lot of people were disappointed in just because the Timberwolves are just not that good this year. They have a lot of good talent, but they're just not a good team. So, it's I don't want to say it's fool's gold or just smoke and mirrors with this team. I think they have found something a little bit. They got to get healthy, and you really want to see this team where, Robert Williams is fully healthy, Kemba's back, and then you got Fournier and Peyton Pritchard coming off the bench, or if you want to start Fournier, you have Marcus Smart coming off the bench, and then you can really figure out, what you can do with a solid 7 to 8 man rotation, coming down the stretch and then into the playoffs, because I don't think they had that before. They also have Jabari Parker now, which I know he's not the number 2 pick that we all thought he was going to be when he came out of Duke, but he's still a guy who can score. He's actually got pretty good size and can rebound a little bit. So, that's another guy off the bench that can score some points for you that the Celtics desperately needed. So we'll see. I mean, there are pieces there now which I think are better than they were before. The problem that the Celtics still have, however, is that they still have a ton of guys who are really young and need to play, but can't really play together on the floor at the same time. That's Peyton Pritchard, Romeo Langford, who's just come back, and Aaron Nesmith. Those are 3 guards, not really small forwards, and can't really play in any of their positions except for guards. You can't really play them all at once. One, because of all their size, and then number 2, they don't have a lot of experience. So when you have multiple guys out on the floor without a lot of experience, it makes it tough, especially defensively in your defensive rotations. So I think that's the thing that they got to kind of figure out right now. Who's going to be the 1 or 2 young guys that we're going to play a lot down the stretch because we need them in the playoffs? Nesmith just hasn't really put it together yet. Pritchard's your backup point guard. I think that's pretty solid that we see that now. And then Langford is some defense on the wing. We hope as Celtics fans that his offense starts to come up to his defense. But we'll see what happens with the Celtics team. Obviously, winning 6 out of 7 was a big boost to them over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, like you said, it helps them to boost them up in the standings, which we really want to be in that 4 or 5th seed going into the playoffs. You really don't want to have to play into this maybe play-in tournament seed or even have to play the number 1 or 2 seed. You want to have to be really in that 4 or 5 seed where you can play a team that's kind of on the same level as you in the first round and get yourself onto the second round. I still don't think this is a team that can contend for the title, but I think it's a team that can kind of go further than I thought with the addition of Jabari Parker, the team getting healthy again, with Kemba Walker actually showing up. It looks like he's getting healthy again. That knee must be feeling a lot better because the other night, obviously, Jaylen Brown was out with a non-COVID related illness. Tatum dropped 44, but he needs somebody else to be like that little catalyst, and it was Kemba Walker. He had 26 points in that game against the Golden State Warriors that helped us win. So I think if we can get Kemba to do that going down the stretch, you have Peyton Pritchard playing great coming off the bench. Love that kid. What a great pick and coming out of the draft. And then the addition of Jabari Parker is just solid minutes. We're talking, like you said, a former number 2 pick, a former Dookie, right? So a guy that clearly knows the game. Anybody that plays for Coach Krzyzewski is a player that is going to be mentally there, that is going to know the game. So this guy is going to be playing great. But I think this is one of those things where I told people they needed to relax, calm down. This team would get it together after the All-Star break. That's exactly what they're doing right now. And I know we had a segment earlier because fans were talking about how they wanted Brad Stevens fired. I had said, relax, just wait. This is a great coach. And obviously he's starting to get it together. They're starting to buy into the system a little bit more. But I think the key is really they're getting healthy. They're all healthy. They're all playing together. They're getting into a full rhythm. And you're starting to see that. And then just to have the addition of a guy like Jabari Parker just helps out but winning 6 of 7 definitely helps. And like we were said earlier, as a coach, it's one of those things where it's not fool's gold. You got to beat the teams that you should beat, and the teams that you're going to hang around with, like that have other superstars, maybe like a Bucks, then you really got to go out and you got to compete to get the win. But a team like Minnesota, obviously, if you let them hang around, or any NBA team, if you let them hang around for 3 quarters, they will be there in the 4th quarter to try to win the game. And I think that's what you saw with Minnesota the other night. But other than that, we've really been on a hot streak, and all the guys are really coming together and playing solid minutes. I'm really looking forward to seeing what this team can do in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I think, before the trade deadline and even before they got picked up Jabari Parker, you were like, we don't know if they even have the horses to even get to the Eastern Conference Finals this year. Which they've gotten to 3 out of the last 4 seasons. So, now that they have Fournier, who, again, is a guy that can score off the bench, or you can start him if you need to. You got Parker. You got a couple of guys that come off the bench and score. There's kind of a smaller team, especially Robert Williams is not a big center. He's only like 6'9", plays bigger than 6'9", but so that's going to be the one thing that they're going to have a tough time with. If they have to play Philly in the playoffs, I think that's going to be a real tough matchup for them. I know they've beaten them in the past, but they don't have Al Horford anymore. They don't have, even Gordon Hayward anymore, who gave you size on the wing. You don't have the same pieces that you were able to use to beat Philly over the last couple of seasons in the playoffs. So that's going to be the big question. I don't know if they can beat them in the postseason without that post player who can really try to at least kind of limit Embiid, because Embiid's been unreal this year. He's probably should be, if he didn't get hurt, he'd definitely be the MVP. It's going to be between him and Jokic. Jokic has been unreal too. So, we talked about big men and how big men are coming back. The 2 top MVP candidates are 2 big men. So you'll see that there. But we'll see what happens with the Celtics. It's obviously great that they won those 6 games in a row. And, it's going to be fun down the stretch. We weren't sure if it was going to be fun at the end of the season. Now we are sure that it should be fun to watch them as the season finishes up over the next month and into the playoffs. But a season that is over, but, we're still talking about now, is the college sports, especially when it comes to college football and college basketball. We've seen how in the past college athletes, have been limited by if they want to leave a school or not, like what their options were. But now this new NCAA transfer rule has changed things, made it a little bit better, I think, for college athletes. Coach Perry, what do you think about this?
Well, first off, if you're liking this show, I was chasing around a stink bug. I've been doing a bunch of hand movements on here. Come on, like the show here.
Yeah, you can't get that anywhere else, right?
Yeah, you can't get that anywhere else. You can't. Not like this. Like the show. Give us a subscribe, right? We got a phone number. Give us a call here. You want to give us a call about a certain topic? You want us to talk about a certain topic? Well, then do that. I would love to answer your questions about X's and O's or anything about the draft coming up next week. Subscribe to the show, give us a like, follow us on Twitter, and let's get this action going. But this NCAA transfer rule, I think, is groundbreaking, to be honest. And I think it's about time, to be honest, too. I think it's about time. We're talking about young men and women that are having to make some of the most important decisions of their life, right? Coming out of high school, having to pick the school that they're going to for the next 4 or 5 years of their life. And some of these players, if their potential to go pro, it's a bigger decision because they want to be in the right program to kind of drive them to the pros, right? And so they can learn more and increase their draft stock. But occasionally you make the wrong decision, you pick the wrong school, maybe a coach gets fired, which you see that a lot now. A coach gets fired. That was the coach that you committed to. You kind of want out and you want a second chance here. In the past with the NCAA transfer rule, if they had played already and had spent some time on the court or on the field or on the track, that they would actually have to sit out a year of eligibility wise and just kind of practice with your new team and get yourself sorted out at your new school, but you wouldn't actually be able to compete for a whole season until that next year where you could roll in. You'd maybe be a senior in the classroom, but a junior on the field. But now you're seeing where you get this one exemption, which I like it now. I really like it. If they've made the wrong decision and say they picked the wrong school or the coach gets fired, they now have one choice where they can go to a new school and just play automatically and play immediately and play with their new team. So I think this is something that they should have looked at this a long time ago. So I think it's late to the game, but better late than never. So good cheers to the NCAA for finally bringing this rule in. But I think it's something that, was clearly needed we're talking about 18 to 23-year-old young men and women that are making important choices, and they need people to help them make these choices. But this is one of those things where it's like a get out of jail free card. We all like that, right? Get out of jail free card and go ahead and move on to your new school and play automatically and continue on with your NCAA career.
Yeah, I think this makes all the sense in the world. I know the rules sort of evolved, I believe, especially over the last few years. It was, like you said, you wanted to leave and go somewhere else, you had to sit out a year. Then I think it was if you were at, in football, if you were at like an SEC school and you wanted to transfer to a lower level school, at the time I was going to Northeastern and they had a football program and it was 1AA. So if you were coming from, the Big East, you could transfer down, I believe, to a 1AA school and you wouldn't have to sit out a year. But if you were doing a lateral transfer to, say, from the Big East to the Pac-12 or whatever you want to call it, you had to sit out a year. Then it was, I think if your coach left, you could also leave. I think that was the rule. I'm not 100% sure, but I think there was something like that changed a few years ago. Now this one is just makes all the sense in the world. And it's not, people worry about kids coming into college, going to one school for a year, playing for that team, then going to another school because they like that team better, and then the next year going to another school and then skipping around all 4 years. And that's not going to happen with this rule because you can only do this once. So you go to the school that you thought you wanted to go to, and after a year or two you don't like it, you could transfer to another school, and then that's it. And then if you want to transfer to a third school, then you have to sit out a year. Then you have to figure out eligibility and all that kind of thing. But to allow kids to do this once, it gives them options, right? You talked about how, the biggest decision in their life and the biggest choice that an 18-year-old kid has in their life, sometimes a 17-year-old, is what college they're going to go to. And I know at that age, I know I'm probably speaking for all of us when I say we made a lot of dumb decisions when we were 17 and 18 years old. So sometimes you just make the wrong choice, or you show up and the team is just different. You're not getting any time, or the school is just you're not doing well in the classroom just because it just doesn't feel right. That happens. So this makes total sense. And then you have something like the pandemic, which just happened where, you might have to kind of just get a restart somewhere else because the whole season was out of whack. You didn't perform the way you wanted to. The season didn't go the way you wanted it to. The school didn't go the way you wanted it to. So you kind of just need a clean slate. This is the way to do it. So this makes all the sense in the world. Finally, the NCAA is really thinking about the student athletes and not just the money. Coaches have been able to leave whenever they want. So why can't students do the same thing?
Yes, this is definitely a rule that benefits the student athlete. I think we're going to see the transfer portal light up. It's one of those things that the transfer portal lights up every year before this anyway. I think we're really going to see it light up now, knowing that, hey, the eligibility is not going to get hurt. They're going to be able to play right away and integrate themselves with their new team and new school immediately without any punishment or repercussion. I think this is a great rule for, like I said, young men and women that are making a huge decision for not only their education, hopefully, where they're going to go and get a 4-year education fully, but also, like I said, some of these guys are looking to go to the pros, and women looking to go to the pros. So this is a big deal. And I'm glad that the NCAA finally did it. Like I said, better late than never. I think the NCAA has obviously dropped the ball on a lot of things in the past, but I think they're starting to pick up the pieces, and this is a first good step. But moving on to topic number 6, and that's the Patriots and Justin Fields. And man, it seems like that relationship has been increasing over these last few weeks. And with the draft coming up next week, we figured we'd drop a few draft topics in there because I know we're excited for it. So the potential of Justin Fields fitting in for the Patriots, and is Justin Fields the right fit for the Patriots?
I don't see why not. The Patriots, no matter who they draft, unless they got Trevor Lawrence, which isn't happening, I don't think whoever they draft is going to play right away. because you got Cam Newton in there. It's again going to be a short offseason. I think they want somebody to start the season who knows the offense now. Cam's going to have better knowledge of the offense this season. You have a lot of new pieces on the offensive side of the ball with your new tight ends, couple new receivers. They're probably going to draft at least one receiver, if not more. They might draft another running back. So you need somebody on the offensive side of the ball that can kind of help guide everybody else with the offense. So I think Cam Newton's going to start out there. So you don't have to force any of these guys to play right away. So I think a guy like Justin Fields, even a Trey Lance, I think would be awesome for the Patriots. They need to look at the future of the quarterback position, because after Cam Newton, who knows what they think about Jarrett Stidham still. They might still like him, but I got to think they're either going to trade up and get a guy in the first round, or they're going to pick up a guy in the second round, like a Kellen Mond or a Davis Mills or somebody of that nature. But if you really want to find your next guy of the future for this Patriots football team, go up and get him. I think they should just take the picks that they have and go up and try to get Justin Fields. You also, if you're the Patriots, you're probably not going to have a better draft pick than 15 over the next few years. Your team's going to be good. They just spent a lot of money in free agency. Depending on what they do with the rest of the draft, I think this is going to be a good team. They're going to be better than 7-9. So they're probably going to be picking in the 20s, if not better, next season and maybe the season after that. So if you're this close, right, and it's a lot easier to move up from 15 into the top 10 than it is to move up from, say, 25 into the top 10, you got to do it now. You're not going to have to give up as much draft capital to move up. You've got 5 quarterbacks who people think are first-round talent. There's some people who don't think Mac Jones is. We can probably get into that next week. But I'd love to see them go up and get Justin Fields. I don't think they would go up and trade for Trey Lance. I think Lance just does not have enough reps as a quarterback. He's only got like 20-something starts as a high school and college quarterback, which is not a lot. Where Justin Fields, he just started 2 years at Ohio State on top of what he did in high school. So he's got a lot more time behind the quarterback. You have a little bit more on him. So if you really like him, go up and get him. And I think the Patriots should try to do that next week.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where Fields, I think, has really been looking to bust his draft stock up even more. He held a second pro day last week where he was still making other throws and doing other skill drills. And the Patriots sent 3 scouts to see that second pro day. So I think that's what really draws the eyes a little bit, being like, wow, is this the right fit? Are the Patriots looking to move up because they're, falling in love with them and sending all these scouts to look at every little thing and to come back with a full draft report to say, hey, this guy is worth moving up or we should stay at 15. And I think that's exactly what that move was for the Patriots, to have that additional look to make that decision. And Bill Belichick clearly came out and said he's going to let the draft board kind of fall out the way it is. If there's a player that they feel is kind of dropping down the line and it maybe gets to 7 or 8 and they feel like a player is still there, that they could make the move to move up in the draft and grab that player that has dropped down their board. But I think this is also one of those things where we've talked about it in the past. This could be a smoke and mirrors play where the Patriots might have their eye on somebody else entirely, right? And they're just trying to make you think that they're going after Fields. And it's the same thing. Is Fields even going to be available after the 3rd pick? We've talked about it. San Francisco probably going to go after a quarterback, and we all think it probably is going to be Justin Fields. So it's one of those things where we're talking about him being the right fit for the Patriots, no doubt. He's the right fit for the Patriots, a young, mobile quarterback that can play in Josh McDaniels' system, has a great arm, is still developing. You can still get a lot out of him. You can get a ton of years out of him. So this is a right call. And in my opinion, behind Trevor Lawrence, I think Justin Fields is the best quarterback in the draft. And I know a lot of people want to bring up Wilson. They want to bring up Trey Lance. I don't believe it. I don't see it. I think Justin Fields is the best quarterback behind Lawrence in this draft. And don't get me wrong, I've been watching a lot of Trey Lance over the last few weeks, because I wanted to see what the hype was about and what everybody was talking about. And I'm telling you, I've seen a lot of improvement, but I still have a lot of questions. And I still have a lot of questions on if he can do it at this highest level right now. The one great thing is he's being trained by Quincy Avery, who is a private quarterback trainer that also trains Deshaun Watson and Josh Dobbs and a ton of other NFL quarterbacks. So I think that is clearly going to help Trey Lance in his development to not only get ready for the draft, but to become a better NFL quarterback. And he's clearly going to get drafted. But yeah, Justin Fields, I think, is the guy. That's the guy that if I'm going to go move up to make a pick at quarterback, if I can't get Lawrence, which obviously he's going number 1, and I'd love to talk about Lawrence next week too, because I think it's debatable, is he going to have a great NFL career, to be honest. But right now, I think he is the best pro-ready player at that position, and that's why he's going to go number 1 overall. But I think Justin Fields is not that far behind him, right? And like I said, this is a mobile QB that brings just something totally different to the game. We've obviously been seeing it a lot over the last few years with Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Deshaun Watson. And I think this is another player, if you give him some development, he can fall right in line with those guys. So I'm really looking forward to seeing if the Patriots are going to move up to try to make a move for a guy like Justin Fields. But it's arguable if he's going to be there. Like I said, I think the 49ers are going to pull the trigger and draft Justin Fields number 3 overall. If they do not, though, then it's game on to see where he goes and if the Patriots will move up into maybe 5 or 6 or 7 to try to draft Justin Fields and get that young ace up your sleeve.
Yeah, this is going to be very interesting. I still can't picture the 49ers trading all that draft capital to then go up and get Mac Jones when they could have possibly gotten him at 12. But, I think that some people think they can take him and throw him in the system right away, and he can just run the Kyle Shanahan system. I don't know why you give up all that draft capital for just that, but we'll see what they do. They could be right. We'll see what happens. This draft is going to be awesome, and we're going to keep talking about it for the rest of the show, but also next week's going to be a big draft show because it's going to be the night before the draft, so it's going to be a lot of fun for us. But folks, as we keep talking tonight, make sure that you follow us on YouTube. Give us a subscription to Comeback Sports. You can also follow Brandon and I on Twitter. You'll see our Twitter handles in a few moments at the bottom of the screen. And also at the bottom of the screen, check out that voicemail number. Right now you can call us at that number, leave a voicemail, and we'll play it back on the air if it's a question about some sports topic that you want us to talk about, or if you want to make sort of a statement about something, we'll then kind of talk about that, your statement as well, when it comes to sports, and we'll make sure that we discuss that also, what you want to talk about. We'll make sure we play it on the air, your name, what you want to talk about. It's all going to be right there. And then in the future, we're hoping we can actually have a call-in feature to this show. That we can actually have people call in live, which is going to be a lot of fun. But moving on in our next sports topic, we're going to stick with the Pats in the draft. So if they don't go up and get Justin Fields, or if they don't go up and get Trey Lance, or if they don't go up and get Mac Jones, who are they going to stick and pick at 15? What are they going to do right there? Or are they going to move up and get another player that's not a quarterback in the draft?
Well, I think this is a rich draft, especially in the first round. So there's a lot of talent, all right? But first off, I got 2 things. Call that number, especially there's a guy that, hey, said I was an idiot about Carson Wentz. Well, then call that number and leave that comment about me being an idiot talking about Carson Wentz. And then with Mac Jones and Trey Lance, I really believe those guys are second-round draft talent. But, yeah, with this Patriots and who they could go after, like I said, it's a rich first round with a lot of talent. So if they're not going to go after a quarterback with that number 15th overall, or if they were to move up to get somebody, first, I think if they were to move up to get somebody, it would be Kyle Pitts for me. Kyle Pitts is the man. I mean, the best tight end in the game right now in college football, and he's going to make a splash coming into the NFL. And I'm going to talk about him more later on in the show when we get to number 9. Because this guy is NFL ready. He is an NFL ready stud. So if they're going to move up, I would say it's to get Kyle Pitts because he can play tight end. He can play wide receiver. He is a nightmare for matchup wise. Okay. And like we've said, the NFL is all about matchups. But if they're going to stay at 15 and they're going to, not be able to draft a quarterback and they're going to go after a different position, I would say, Patrick Surtain. If Patrick Surtain is still there, the cornerback from Alabama, if he's still available, or J.C. Horn, if he's still available, these are two guys that I'm going to talk about next, number 8 overall. But I think that's guys, if they can improve their defense, that would be ways of doing it. We obviously have an aging secondary, especially in the safety division with the McCourty twins. So I think you could bring in a guy like J.C. Horn or a guy like Patrick Surtain, and they could either play cornerback or safety. So I think that would give the Patriots a lot of options. And you've heard me saying it for weeks now on this show. Another option would be to go after a wide receiver and bring in another young offensive talent onto this team. So Cam Newton or Jarrett Stidham or Justin Fields will have another option to throw to. So a guy like Devontae Smith, who has been dropping down the draft boards, which to me has been crazy to see the Heisman Trophy winning wide receiver, amazing route runner, amazing hands, amazing talent, dropping out of the top 10 right now, they're saying. So if he's still around, I think you move up and grab him, or a guy like Jalen Waddle, his teammate that played opposite of him. I think that would be a great option to bring in a young offensive talent. So I'd say, yeah, either cornerback or wide receiver or safety. I think those are some options that we should look at.
Yeah, no question. I mean, you actually kind of stole the guy that I would love to see them get at 15 if he does last that long on the defensive side, and that's Patrick Surtain. You look at the Patriots right now, Stephon Gilmore's in the final year of his contract. They might even move him, on draft night or even after draft night. We'll see what happens with Gilmore. I'd love to see him just stay because I think the guy's awesome. They put a second-round tender on J.C. Jackson. He actually signed the tender, so he's going to be with the Patriots for another season, but then he's a free agent next year. So you either are keeping both guys or you're losing Gilmore, and then you're losing them both next year. Either way, you're probably going to lose at least one, if not both, next season. So you got to have, when you have a shutdown corner, or at least a number one corner who doesn't need safety help over the top, and he can just take out one of the receivers on the other team, that changes your defense so much. We've seen it in New England with, years ago with Ty Law, then with Asante Samuel, and then with Darrelle Revis, and then even for a little while with Malcolm Butler, and then most recently with Stephon Gilmore. You've always had a corner that can kind of like take away sort of half the field or a third of the field, or take a receiver out so that you can play bracket coverage on other receivers or tight ends and so forth. So if you're going to lose two of those guys in the offseason, it'd be great if you had a young guy come up right behind them, whether it's, like you said, Patrick Surtain, I think would be great. Horn looks like he's a really good corner too. Both those guys have dads who played in the NFL, so there's an NFL pedigree. These guys are going to be coming up in the next topic that we're going to talk about as well. But then there's also an option where if the Patriots trade back, if they don't, if they see a bunch of guys at 15 who they really like, but think the next 10 guys are kind of all at the same level, they could trade back, get more picks, and then use that next year to pick up a quarterback or have options over the next couple of years. So if they move back a little bit in the first round, one guy that a lot of analysts have been talking about is Zaven Collins, the linebacker out of Tulsa. He's like 6'3", 6'4", 265, 270, versatile, long arms, can play inside, can rush the passer, can cover. He's like one of those versatile linebackers, almost like a Dante Hightower, maybe even a little bit quicker, maybe not as good against the run, but one of those guys where you bring him in, Hightower's probably not going to be in the league for another couple of years, or, they might have to move on from him for salary cap reasons because he's getting up there. He's won Super Bowls too, so you wonder how much longer he's going to play. And then behind him, you've got Josh Uche, who I think is going to be really good, but he's more of a weak side linebacker. And then you don't really have that other inside guy. Juwan Bentley's kind of just okay. And he can't stay on the field. So if you go get a linebacker that you can pick up in the 20s, you can pick up a couple of picks with it by moving back. That could be an option for the Patriots as well. I know Patriots fans don't like hearing that the Pats might move back, but I do think that is an option for the Patriots if they don't necessarily like what they see at 15.
No, it's definitely, they've been proven to move back, right? They've moved back historically. And I think that's why the Patriots fans would just be disappointed at this point with this draft being so rich and with there being so much talent in the top 15 picks, that if they don't move up, that at least just stay at 15 and pick at 15, please. Don't move back. Like, I'd be really disappointed if they move back in this draft, but it wouldn't shock me if they did, because historically that's something they do. But moving on to topic number 8 in the defensive draft. And hey, rich draft, we said, a really rich top 15, but it's offensive heavy. And hey, I'm an offensive minded guy, so I love it. But hey, there are going to be some defensive guys. You need some defensive studs to stop these offensive guys who are possibly going to be one of the first defensive studs to go off the board.
Yeah, I think we just mentioned him. I think Patrick Surtain could be the first guy off the board on the defensive side. First of all, corners are so important in the NFL. We mentioned how a shutdown corner or a number one corner can really change your defense. Surtain's big. He's, I think, 6'2", 210. His dad was a really good corner in the NFL. Very technically sound as a corner. Can play press man, but can also play zone. Very fundamentally sound corner. As we mentioned, he's already got the NFL pedigree with his dad. Played at Alabama, so he's played in the SEC. He's played for a great defensive coach in Nick Saban. So the only, I think, worry you have in taking Surtain early is that there's been some defensive backs for Alabama that just kind of haven't worked out. I mean, I know Dre Kirkpatrick, has been better as of late, but they've had some other guys some corners especially, that just haven't totally panned out as, top 20 picks or so. But this kid looks like he is the number one corner. And he is the guy I would take if I'm looking for a defensive player. If I have an early pick and he's still on the board, that's the guy I'm taking, Patrick Surtain. I don't care if I have other good corners. I'm taking Surtain because I think he can change a defense for any NFL team.
Yeah, earlier in the show, we talked about how obviously Curry changed the game of basketball. Well, the game of football has changed over the last decade. Instead of really being run heavy, and you can maybe even say over the last 2 decades, instead of being run heavy, it's turned into a passing league. So, and not only have we seen the wide receiver position be more valuable, but the cornerback position has become more valuable, along with the receiving running back becoming more valuable. So it's just really one of those things where a pass-heavy league needs some defenders to come out, and I think Patrick Surtain is that guy. I think he is going to be the number one defender off the board, being the best cornerback available in the draft. And like we said, we talked earlier about a guy that can play multiple positions in the NFL. Not only do I believe that he could line up outside and play your number one receiver outside, but I think he could play the slot and be a slot cornerback as well, which is huge in the NFL. Or he could play safety. Like I said, if the Patriots wanted to go after this kid and use him in multiple positions, maybe have Gilmore on one side, maybe have Surtain on the other, or maybe, like I said, move on from the McCourty twins, because we really haven't seen too much production out of those two over the last year. So it's like one of those things where you could easily see Surtain playing safety because he's that talented as well. But J.C. Horn is another guy. If maybe they just say, hey, we like Horn better, and maybe their intangibles are really close, and maybe like Horn just got a better interview right now, I could see J.C. Horn becoming the first defender off the board, the cornerback out of South Carolina, another guy that is multidimensional, that could play inside, outside, or you could see him playing safety in the NFL. And a lot of times that happens. If you have a cornerback that maybe doesn't pan out in the NFL, like outside or inside, you would bring him to safety. That way he's not playing a wide receiver directly. He can play the zone a little bit more, or he can play a little bit more zone ranger and play the ball and go and use his ball skills to go and make plays. Or maybe he's a great tackler. He can come down into the box now and tackle. So I think it's one of those things where you're starting to see multi-dimensional corners be able to go all around the field. And that's because you got wide receivers and running backs going all over the field as well. So it's just the game is developing and you're seeing players develop along with the game. But I think those are the first 2 defenders that you could see that could come off the draft board this year and next week, to be honest.
Yeah, no question. I think you're absolutely right about the 2 defensive backs. The other thing is, too, is there's not a complete stud at either defensive tackle or defensive end. I mean, Christian Barrymore is a really good player. People are talking about Kwity Paye out of Michigan as defensive end, the Phillips kid from Miami. All those guys still have some things that don't make them like those true blue chip guys that could be top 10 picks on the defensive side of the ball. I think the two corners do have that. I think that's why you're going to see the corners go off the board first before those other guys. But moving on to our next topic, and this is still with the NFL draft. And, we're going to talk about the draft a lot today. We're going to talk a lot more about the draft next week because next Wednesday, our next show is the night before the first round of the draft. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're not going to see you, our audience, until the draft is completely done the following week. So a lot of draft talk. We both love football. We're going to keep talking about it. But our next topic number 9, is about the most NFL-ready player coming out of the draft. I know you mentioned Kyle Pitts, Brandon, so you can either talk about him or maybe another player that you think is going to be ready to go from day one.
It's Kyle Pitts, baby. Kyle Pitts is the guy. I'm telling you. I think he is the most NFL-ready player now. He's better than Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion. Like I said, the NFL is just hungry for quarterbacks so bad and needy for the quarterback position so bad that's why you're going to see maybe 2 or 3 quarterbacks get drafted before Kyle Pitts. But realistically, this is the guy that is NFL ready right now. We're talking about a guy that is, I believe, 6'3", 6'4", 225 pounds, ran a 4.4, 4.5 40, okay, runs crisp routes, has amazing hands, has great strength. He's everything you want in an NFL tight end. And not only because he runs those great routes, he can be an NFL wide receiver, and you can split him out or you could put him in the slot. And it's a matchup nightmare for anybody. If you put a linebacker on him, he's going to run by him. If you put a defensive back on him, he's going to power him and outstrength him. This guy is the guy right now. We're talking, you want to see the next Rob Gronkowski? The next Rob Gronkowski is Kyle Pitts, and he's ready to go. I am telling you, man, I am pumped about this guy. He just engraved his name at the University of Florida as being one of their best players of all time in their Walk of Fame. And honestly, I think this guy is going to have a great NFL career. Whoever picks this guy up, he is going to be able to do so much for them immediately. He is NFL ready right now. He can step on the field, score touchdowns, and get a ton of catches. And I'd say, honestly, I'm going to predict his rookie year, 50 to 60 catches, 5 or 6 touchdowns, and maybe 600 to 700 yards because of it, and maybe even more because this guy, I'm telling you, the ceiling is up there for him. He is an NFL ready stud right now. And then the other guy, we talked about him, is probably Patrick Surtain. Comes from an NFL pedigree family. I'm telling you, this guy is going to know how to break down film and break down NFL players because he's going to get taught by his dad even more than he's already been taught by his father. But then he's also come from one of the best Division I programs in college football history with one of the best Division I coaches with Nick Saban in the University of Alabama, who, like you said, they produce a ton of NFL talent, some that pan out, some that don't. But generally, why NFL teams go after Alabama's talent so much, obviously they win titles, but Alabama generally wins the recruiting battle. They generally have the best recruiting class. They're going out and getting 5-star high school studs. So generally, these guys will pan out like a Julio Jones and just turn into one of the most amazing players. So if I'm a betting man, I'm going to bet more that a player's going to develop and pan out of Alabama than out of South Dakota. All right. And we've talked about it plenty of times on this show, right? That's a little hint at you know who, and we won't bring him up again. But yeah, I would bet more on an Alabama player than a guy like that. And so I think Patrick Surtain is going to be one of those other guys that is going to be NFL ready. He's lined up against receivers in the SEC, which, like it or not, it is the best football conference in the country. And they have some of the best players, and he's lined up against them. So I think those are the two best guys. If I'm going after a guy, it's Kyle Pitts and Patrick Surtain. They're NFL ready. Yeah,
it makes total sense. One of the knocks on Kyle Pitts supposedly is he's not a great blocker, but he's actually a better blocker than some people are giving him credit for. He's a willing blocker. He's got the size. He's got the length. He can do it. He's not Gronk. He's not George Kittle, but he can block just as good as Travis Kelce. He can block just as good. He's actually probably a better blocker than Darren Waller. So he's one of those guys where, and he's going to get better as a blocker in the NFL anyway, because most guys do, because they're going to be forced to block a little bit more in the NFL in multiple ways. But you can also split him out wide. He's that smooth of an athlete where you can split him out wide. So, if he fell to the Patriots, that's not going to happen. But I'd absolutely take him, because even though you've already got two really good tight ends that you just signed, you can split him out wide. You can use him in a million different ways. So, yeah, he's absolutely NFL ready. Surtain, I totally agree with. One guy that I think is NFL ready, Devontae Smith. That guy is a fantastic route runner. He's not necessarily lightning fast, but he's fast. And everybody talks about his size. He's really small at 185, if he's even that. He might be 175. He doesn't really get beat at the line of scrimmage, though. If you go back and watch him, when teams try to press him, he's not getting manhandled at the line of scrimmage. And that's what teams worry about with smaller receivers is, really getting jammed at the line of scrimmage, something Ty Law and Darrelle Revis used to do all the time with receivers. But that doesn't happen to him. He gets knocked around on the football field, gets right back up. It's not like he, comes up, he's sucking wind, and he's got to sit out a play. Devontae Smith is a football player. So with the way that he can get separation, he can get off the line of scrimmage, he can run great routes, he knows where to find the open spots and coverage. That guy, you can plug him in day one. He's going to be a really good receiver for you. So that's one of the guys that I would say is also a player that is NFL ready from day one. There's a lot of guys in the first round that could go that it is based off of just their natural ability. I think one of those things is because a lot of guys didn't play this past season. Jamar Chase didn't play this past year. There's a bunch of other guys that opted out this season. So, Micah Parsons is considered one of those guys who it probably needs some time to develop, has all the talent in the world as a linebacker, but is a little bit immature. Doesn't mean he's a bad kid, but he's just a little bit, he needs to grow up a little bit. We talked about Trey Lance. There's probably some of these quarterbacks. I still think Zach Wilson needs to kind of grow up a little bit. I don't know if he's ready to just be the starting quarterback for the Jets right away. So, the guys that we just mentioned are the guys that are going to come in right away. They're going to play right away. They're going to be great players for whatever team they go to right away because of the way they play in the field and their maturity as players. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, to see those guys just jump in at the get-go for their NFL teams.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you that Devontae Smith is NFL ready. And I think, to compare it to a couple of guys, like one guy we just seen step away from the game, a Julian Edelman. People didn't like his downfield speed, but a great route runner, a guy that had great hands, gets open, great body control, just a baller. And then maybe another guy is a Cooper Kupp or a Steve Smith. I think that's other guys, that were small, underrated, and they've just turned into NFL studs. So I think Devontae Smith is easily NFL ready right now and could definitely impact the game immediately. And I think another thing that's overlooked is offensive linemen. Honestly, I think offensive linemen coming out of college right now, a few of the offensive tackles that they have predicted to go in the top 20, I think those guys are also plug and play. And I'm not saying because the line's easy to play, it's not. But I think the offensive linemen in college are becoming so developed right now, not only physically but mentally, that they're generally ready to go day one. So I think those are a couple other positions that are just ready to go, offensive tackle. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Jamar Chase can do in the NFL and how he's going to develop. But you brought up a great point about Kyle Pitts, not blocking. But I think, like you said, I think he's going to develop. I think that's going to be part of his game that he's going to develop. He's just going to clearly get stronger in an NFL strength and conditioning program. So like I said, I think, sky's the limit for Kyle Pitts. That's the guy to watch out for. But moving on to the final topic of the night, a topic that is exciting, man. I wish I had a palm tree behind me right now, maybe like a Mai Tai to drink, like maybe a Cuban cigar or something.
Yes.
A lady in a bikini, some Miami feel, because F1, baby, is going to Miami. F1 signs a 10-year deal with the city of Miami to host a Grand Prix around Hard Rock Stadium. And I mean, we've already talked about how Miami is such a great city and hosts so many great events already. So to have F1 come in, one of the highlights of the world, and it brings such a great following. And to have the United States get a second Grand Prix, I think this is amazing news.
Yeah, this is huge. We keep talking about, especially you, Brandon, about how F1, even if you don't love motorsports, F1 is like following the Travel Channel, right? They go to all these different countries, all these different, great international cities. And then you just throw Miami into the mix because Miami's a beach city. It's got palm trees. It's this glamorous, like, nightlife city. We saw when LeBron went to Miami that it became almost like an LA of the East. And it was just a really cool city. And it has very much an international flair to it. So this makes total sense for F1. F1, Boston won an F1 a few years ago, and it just didn't work out. Boston's such a condensely populated city in a small geographic area. You had some residents who just didn't really want it. It was, amongst some other things with sports coming into town. But it just didn't happen in Boston. It just didn't seem like it was going to fit. It was a good attempt by the city, but it just didn't happen. Miami makes total sense. It makes total sense where it is, what kind of city it is. It's a destination city. People are going to want to go there to not just go to F1, but hang out in Miami, go out at night, go to the beach, be in this tropical place like Miami. It's going to be great. You're going to see a ton of celebrities there. I mean, it makes total sense why F1 wanted to go to Miami. It just fits with all the other cities that F1 makes stops at along the way throughout the season. To go to Miami, it's a home run, I think, by F1.
I'm glad producer Ben's playing the video right now, because this is the video right now that gets you hyped for the Miami GP, to get you ready. This is the video that I was sharing right now. And we're talking about a deal that was in the making for years, all right? So the first time that the Miami GP came up as an idea was around 2018. And it was just a breath and just a glimmer in our eye. But now they've actually confirmed it, made the deal, signed the deal, announced it. Ticket packages are going to be going on sale soon. So I'm pumped. I'm just looking forward to seeing where they put it on the calendar, what time of year it's going to be, and what time of year it's going to fit into American sports. Because I think, like I said, F1 is blowing up in America. It's blowing up globally, but especially here in America. So if they put it in the right time frame in America to coincide with some other big sporting events, I think that would be a great thing to do. You'd get a ton more fans. Obviously going to draw a lot more money and a lot more attention to the sport, into the race, into the city. So I think this is exciting news. And like you said, it just makes sense. They go to all these other glamorous places like a Monaco or like a Spain or an Abu Dhabi. They just came from Imola in Italy. So it's just one of those things where it just fits. It fits F1. Miami is such a glamorous city with the nightlife, the glitz, the glamour, the speed. If you go on South Beach, you're going to see Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Porsches. So it just fits in, baby, man. And it's a city. It's a city of lights and money. And so, yeah, this is perfect for F1. And I am just excited to see. The track is exciting, too. So it's built, like I said, around Hard Rock Stadium. 19 turns around Hard Rock Stadium. And it looks like it's going to be an exciting track that hopefully is going to have a good amount of overtake opportunities, because that's really what brings the excitement to F1, is when we can see great, close wheel-to-wheel racing and wheel-to-wheel excitement and overtake opportunities. But you brought up how Boston tried to get an F1 race, and boy, was I amped for that, and I was really excited. Didn't come to play. They had two different track layouts in Boston. The first one they wanted to do was a street circuit. That's when a lot of people complained, because you would have to shut down the streets for pretty much like 5 or 6 days, almost a week, to build the circuit. Then you've got the practice sessions plus the GP, and you also have some accompanying motorsports like F2 that sometimes comes with F1. So that didn't pan out. Then they tried to move it out to one of the airports, and the track layout just was not exciting enough. So then it just kind of just bailed out on Boston at that point. But hey, seeing Miami come and add in an additional city, we obviously already have the United States Grand Prix, which is in Austin, Texas in October. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that every year at the Circuit of America. It's a great track, but I'm really looking forward to this second race on the American continent. And believe it or not, America has the most F1 style tracks in the world and the most F1 rated tracks in the world. So we really deserved more than one Grand Prix. Now we've got them. And it's 2, and it's coming to Miami, baby, and I'll be ready. I'm going to go get my bathing suit after the show and try it on because I'm going to be looking forward to hitting the beach and spending some time in Miami and then watching an exciting race around Hard Rock Stadium.
Yeah, we talk about F1 over the last few weeks. We keep talking about Lewis Hamilton, and the guy's a superstar. I'm just picturing Lewis Hamilton, the superstar, in Miami, with shades on and signing autographs for fans and doing all that kind of stuff. That's going to be a lot of fun, especially to see a guy like him there. Brandon, I'm going to put you on the spot. You mentioned you hope that the F1 puts this event in at a good time of the year. What time of the year, roughly, do you think would be good for Miami to have this?
I honestly think like a springtime race, I think would be amazing. Like, obviously, like we've had just the second Grand Prix, so F1, the season has started. I think if you could have it on the calendar, maybe the second or third race, or maybe even the fourth race of the year, where it comes into like a late April or a May or an early June, I think that would be an amazing time of year where it's not super hot yet in Miami, but it's still going to be a really beautiful time of year, an exciting time of year. We've talked about how exciting we've enjoyed April, right, in sports, and May is coming up. So I think that would be the perfect time for them to bring it in.
Yeah, that's a great call. I think if you sandwich it in between the NFL draft and the Kentucky Derby, you got the Miami F1 race right there. I think that'd be awesome. That'd be an unbelievable 6 weeks, starting with the NCAA tournament all the way through to the Grand Prix and then the Kentucky Derby in May. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So that's certainly exciting, especially for all F1 fans, but just sports fans here in America. Another great event to look forward to. And again, after the pandemic, any type of big business and help you can give to local businesses in the big cities in America is going to be huge because they were the ones that were really hit hardest by the pandemic in those condensely populated areas, and Miami's one of them. So hopefully this helps the economy in Miami as well. I think it's definitely going to do wonders there. Folks, that's going to do it for Comeback Sports this week. As we mentioned, next week is going to be a big week for the NFL draft. Our next show is going to be the night before the NFL draft. Brandon and I love football. We're going to talk a lot about the draft. It might be all draft. We'll see what happens. Crazy stuff's been happening every week in sports, but there's going to be a lot of draft stuff next week, so make sure you tune in for that, along with some other sports stuff. And again, if you see this phone number at the bottom of the screen and you want to ask us a question or make a comment about what we've been talking about in sports or anything going on in sports, call that number, leave a voicemail. We will play it on the air. We will mention your name, and we will talk about whatever you want to talk about on that voicemail. Make sure you check that out as well. You can also follow us on Twitter. You can see the Twitter handles at the bottom of the screen. And finally, if you're watching this on YouTube, which that's the only way you can watch it right now, so you got to be watching it on YouTube, give us a subscription on Comeback Sports, and we will make sure we say your name on the air once you subscribe to our show. Folks, we will see you next week for a big draft Comeback Sports episode, but for right now, we're going to say so long from Comeback Sports. Have a good night, everybody.